folks are introducing themselves in the chat, that's great. Everybody feel free to share where you're joining us from. Love to see all where everybody's coming from. Super exciting for us. I'm going to start out with a few introductions. My name is Jenny Jones Trubinsky. I'm the Executive Director of Lahontan Audubon Society. We are a independent chapter of Audubon Society here in Northwestern Nevada. There's 3 chapters here in the state of Nevada. For those of you who aren't familiar, we're in the US, because we do have folks tuning in from all over the world for these. We are super excited to be offering these workshops. This is the 3rd of 5 workshops that we have available of bird drawing workshops. And we are able to offer them free, thanks and support from Lahontan Audubon Society donors. So thank you to those of you here who have donated to support our programs, as well as a grant from the Nevada Arts Council, the National Endowment for the Arts, and AmeriCorps is also supporting these programs. Tonight we have Muir Laws here to present for us Shorebirds and Waterbirds. And prior to that, we're going to share a little bit more about our chapter and some of the programs and why we are highlighting Shorebirds and Waterbirds tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce one of our board members, Mike Goddard. He is also former refuge manager for Stillwater National Wildlife Refuge here in Nevada. And he's going to give a little bit of an introduction on some of the programs that Lahontan Audubon has been working on. Mike, if you're able to share your screen, I will stop sharing mine.
Okay.
I see your map.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay.
Take it.
Okay. Oh, so my name is Mike Goddard, and wanted to talk with the group tonight about some of the shorebird work we're doing down in the Lahontan Valley. This is a map of the local area with the city of Fallon in the middle, and up in the north, or up in the upper right-hand corner, Stillwater Wildlife Refuge, a 77,000 acre wildlife refuge, and down in the center, south, is Carson Lake wetlands. Up until a few months ago belonged to the Bureau of Reclamation, and now it's been transferred to the state of Nevada, and it's going to become a wildlife management area under the auspices of the state. Both of these wetland and the other wetlands that we have in the valley are very important to shorebirds, and so important that they've been designated as hemispheric reserve sites under the Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve Network. And this is a voluntary grouping of sites that get together, share information, and essentially just try to provide for the needs of the migrating shorebirds. As you can see, a lot of them are along the coast, although we are probably one of the few inland sites. And so with Carson Lake being transferred to the state, they're starting from scratch and having to write a management plan for the area. And National Audubon saw an opportunity to step in and help the state achieve their goals in getting a good management plan. And so they put into a grant, and these are the 4 goals of the grant. And the local Audubon chapter, our chapter, Lahontan Audubon, working on the last 2 to improve capacity for monitoring and to conduct community outreach in the area. So in order to do that, Alan Gubanek, who's the head of our education committee, and myself put together a Zoom presentation to show our volunteers the different shorebirds that utilize the area so they can identify them. So we put together that, and we held some classes for people to come in and learn the shorebirds. And it's not just learning to ID the shorebirds, you've got to learn how to count them and what the methodology is. Sorry. So in one of the classes, the second class, we talked about the survey techniques, counting 300-meter circles in the wetlands, and held some classroom training on that. And here's, here's one of our volunteers, Valerie Anderson. She's working in the class. You see, she's got a data sheet right in front of her there. So you record the species that you see and the temperature and the habitat conditions. So so we had a couple of classes to do that. And then we took the volunteers out on field trips to the various areas. This is Carson Lake wetland. And we went out and did a couple of field trips, practice our skills at identifying different species of birds out there, the shorebirds mostly, and also being able to identify how far out 300 meters is, so we can keep the survey scientifically valid. So we did a couple of those field trips like that. And then starting last fall, and then again this spring, our volunteers went out and helped the federal and the state biologists conduct counts out on the refuge. This is volunteer Brendan Busey. He was one of the lucky ones, got to get out on the airboat. The other volunteers are out working the perimeter of the wetlands, stopping at various overlooks and counting the species that they see and recording that. So we've helped them do 3 surveys last fall, and we've got 2 done this spring, 1 more to do this spring, and then 3 more in the fall. So we've done that. We were out helping the biologists do that. And then in terms of outreach, we've trying to revive the Spring Wings Bird Festival. It got hit pretty hard when the recession hit in about 2007, and we were recuperating from that, and then the pandemic hit. So we're bringing it back this year, and we're going to have a festival on April 30th and May 1st in Fallon to raise awareness in the local community about the wetlands and the importance of conserving them. So that's what we're up to in the local area here, working with shorebirds. Oh, now stop share. How's that? No.
Thank you, Mike.
Right, okay. Am I still sharing?
Nope.
Okay.
You're good. Thank you.
Okay. It went faster than expected.
No, that was perfect.
And drawing.
A huge thank you to Mike for all of the work that he has been doing to help preserve the Lahontan Valley wetlands and promote conservation out there. It's been a lot of work on his part, so big thanks to him. I also want to introduce some other folks that we have here on our call today. Diane Wong is our development coordinator, AmeriCorps Vista, and she is the brains behind this operation. So big round of applause to Diane for coordinating these workshops. Also introduce my son in case you can hear his babbling in the background. I apologize. But we also have Parker Flickner here. He is our community outreach Vista AmeriCorps, and he will be helping tonight with tech support. He's been doing amazing work for us for the last 1.5 years, actually. If you have questions or interested in learning more about our chapter, please check out our website or send us a message, contact@nevadaaudubon.org. Diane and Parker have been doing a great job of putting a bunch of links with different information in the chat, so feel free to check those out. And just in case anybody is not familiar with Zoom and webinars, you will be on mute. If you have questions, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and you can type your questions in there throughout the seminar. We will be having time for Q&A at the end of the class, but if you're having any technical difficulties, you can also type questions in there. If you need something repeated, you can put it in there and we can interrupt. We will be posting a recording of this workshop probably by Wednesday this week, maybe later. We have a busy week with Spring Wings, but you can check out the recordings from the past webinars if you missed those, as well as this one on our YouTube channel. And with that, I am going to introduce our presenter for the evening, John Muir Laws, who I think all of you are very familiar with. And so we are very fortunate to have him here tonight presenting, and I will let you go ahead and take it away.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to be here, and I just want to send a shout out to the Lahontan Audubon Society. It's through conservation and research and education projects like yours that is going to allow us to make smart, informed choices about how to best conserve and protect birds. And want to encourage everybody to get involved with your local chapter of the Audubon Society. And thank you folks so much for the work you're doing in education, research, and stewardship. So today we're going to draw shorebirds. Now, identifying shorebirds, sometimes, there's, well, yes, they're little brown birds, but they actually have different characteristics. There's a whole bunch that I haven't figured out yet, but and so don't feel bad if there are shorebirds you can't identify. One of the best ways to get good at identifying them, though, is to start to sketch the birds that you see, because it's going to get you to look so much more carefully at the birds that are in front of you. When you look really carefully at them, you are going to notice details of bills and posture and all these sorts of things that for a lot of us, we just don't see. But the minute you have to make a sketch, you're going to notice these things, because the process makes you look again and look again and look again. We all kind of very quickly develop this idea in our head of kind of how the bird should look. And what I find is that my mental models kind of get me something that sort of approaches a shorebird, but each one is so specific. I have to look back again and again and again. And that's how we get really good. It's at identifying them and paying attention to the world. It's by those, the drawing is really just a trick to get us to look more deeply and to see the sorts of characteristics that really those kind of really high-end, amazing birders are doing. Have you ever been out with one of these folks on a trip? There's a shorebird. It's totally backlit. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a lesser yellowlegs. I'm like, okay, I saw the black silhouette, but there actually are characteristics that they're picking up on, and you can do that too. So I want to encourage everybody to get your sketch on, get your bird on. You can work from photographs, but I also really want to encourage people to start bringing a sketch pad journal with you into the field and doing this live, because that's where we're going to get ourselves to really notice the birds in a fundamentally different way. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to unpack some secrets for drawing shorebirds. And first, I want to send an apology out to everybody who took early workshops with me on how to draw birds, because my approach to drawing birds has changed since then. So I think we've got a better system. I'm going to be sharing that with you as it applies to shorebirds. And we're going to then be further refining that when we're looking at other species in our subsequent classes. But I think you're going to have a lot of fun tonight. If you've got any questions, please just drop them into the chat. The good folks at the Audubon Society are going to be collecting these and collating them. And at the end, they're going to be feeding me your questions. And so please feel free to do that. Also, if folks from the Audubon Society could also just drop into the chat if there's a link to support the chapter, to donate to the work that you're doing. If you are able to support the chapter, please do. And if your funding and finances at this time, that doesn't work for you, we still really, really want you here. We just invite you to do an act of kindness or of stewardship in your community that otherwise might not have happened because you got to join the Lahontan Audubon Society today. So again, thank you so much, LAS. And here we go. I'm going to share my screen. And there we are. And I am going to hide my meeting calls. All right. So on this side over here, I'm going to be doing some pictures, and I'm going to be drawing some pictures. And on that side over there, I'm going to be showing you pictures of really cute little birds. All these birds were taken off of two websites, seenbirds.com and birdpixel.com. And I'd like to thank photographers Ashok Khosla and Vivek Kanzode for sharing their work with the world of birders who want to draw. They've invited all of us to use those pages as resources to help us with our own drawings. And that would be a lot of fun. So here we go. We're going to start just looking at the proportions and the angles of birds. And I'm going to show you how I go about building a picture of a bird. And hey, here's a bird. It's a shorebird. And if you, when I'm drawing a bird like this, my approach now is to start with, I'll come over here. You see my little cursor? What I want you to do is look at the shape of the water behind the bird's back. You see that? That is the shape that I focus on. The shape of the air or the water as projected behind the bird. And if I can get that line, that shape on my paper, a lot of the rest of the bird is going to follow. So one way to think about this as the bird is walking around, you see the bird, is to pet the bird. Imagine what your hand would be doing if we're going down the back of its cute little neck here and then sort of down its gorgeous godwit back. You're going, okay, you're going to pet the bird. So actually everybody sitting in your chairs, I want you to pet the bird. So your hand's coming down and then feel that angle. Feel that angle change, right? That's how we pet the bird. Now what we're going to do is we're going to transfer that line over to our piece of paper. And I usually start really lightly with a colored pencil. I'll use a light blue or a light purple colored pencil because I could do that just sort of by drawing lightly with a regular graphite pencil, but it's going to work better to do this with a light colored pencil. That way, when you shift to dark lines with either a pen or your regular pencil, it's easier for people's eyes not to get distracted by those original lines. They will ignore the colored ones and just go for those dark ones that you did. So here's how I pat the bird with my pencil. I'm going to come down behind its back, and then I'm going to go out in that direction there. So that's petting the bird. It's back and it's back angled there. Then what I do is I'm going to kind of look how far up this is my head. I'm going to put a little ball of a head out there. And then I'm going to pet the bird in front. Look at this one. It just kind of comes straight down like a wall till some way kind of back in here, it's going to kind of turn down. So I'll kind of will pet the bird and give myself a front of the bird. So my back of the bird, a head, front of the bird. Then I find myself sort of putting in a little egg, a little football, a little oval into here to be the mass of the body of the bird. And from there, kind of block in, there'll be a little kind of wedge of tail, different shapes on different species. My beak is pointing down in a direction this way. So I'm going to just give myself a line in this direction, originally not worrying about how long that beak is, but getting the general direction of the beak. And I'm going to notice where my legs come out. The legs are going to make a backwards bend. And you're going to find a joint a little ways down. And so they're not bending like our knees. They're bending like your ankle, because that actually technically is the bird's ankle. And this one has another footsie sticking down here. And then somewhere in there, the water's cutting that off, and that's what I get. So those are some of my first lines. And so then once I would get something like that, I would then, on top of this little framework, start to draw more slowly, more carefully, the lines that are going to make up my little bird. But they are going to be on top of a framework that is established first by that negative shape at the back, placing in the head, negative shape at the front, and a little ball of the body. Look at how big this bird's head is compared to its body. And compare those proportions with this. Aww, isn't that cute? All right, ridiculously cute. So what makes it cute is it's got a big old head and a big old eye relative to its body. Let's just go back to this one. Not cute, cute, not cute, cute. All right, no disrespect, but you're just not as cute as this guy, right? And that's because when you see big head, your brain goes, aw. But I draw a bird like this, even though we don't see a neck, exactly the same way. Start to pet the bird. Who can resist petting a snowy plover, right? So pet the plover, oh, you little plover, right? So to feel your hand going down its back. And then what you're going to do is you're going to transfer that line to your piece of paper, right? This one I don't have two angles. It's mostly all the same line, right? There's the back of my plover. And my plover gets a little plovery head. And then I'm going to do the same thing. What is the shape of the air in front here? Just this kind of curve down. It's going to come down like this. There's going to be a little inflection point somewhere in here. And if I can kind of get this little front end, then I've got a little scoop that I can place that ball into, just like I did here. Place a little ball into that, and that gives me a little body. And from that, I can then have a little tail that comes out. Sometimes you get a neat little angle where the tail, the undertail coverts come into the body. This one is looking down here. And its tail, its legs, let's kind of look along the bottom. Imagine that you were balancing this ball of the bird on the tip of a pen here. Where the foot contacts the ground is going to be on that balance line. And we see a leg that is coming out somewhere in here, so not quite in the middle, a little bit back from it. It's going to come back just a little bit, draw in a little ball where the joint is, and then it comes forward. And that back leg is coming down straighter. Those are my starter lines. So I'm going to build up my bird. A couple of other lines that are really useful is, what is the forehead angle? Does it have a steep forehead like this one does? Or we'll go back here. Does it have a slopey forehead? That's another really useful angle. It's going to make your species, the species you're drawing, look like the bird that you've got in. So here, now we've got something a little bit in between these two. But the way that I draw it, it's going to be exactly the same thing. So it's just going to start with pet the bird, pet the dowager, feel the dowager, be the dowager you want to see in the world, right? And it's got a little neck that comes down, and it turns out to about a body with an angle like that. And it's got a head that is larger than we saw on that little godwit. Now here's the shape of the air in front of the neck. It comes in, it comes out, it comes down. That's all I need to kind of get myself to place a ball in. So I'm placing that ball, I'm thinking about how big is that head compared to that body. How's this one looking? It's looking good. It's looking down. So looking down at about an angle like that, let's give it a forehead angle. Where does its legs come out? All right, here's the bottom of this. So back a little bit, we're going to come down to our little joint that's just at the water level. And the other one we're not really seeing. It's tucking into the water. So if you can't see something, don't draw it. This bird's wing is tucked up, so it wouldn't hurt me at all. Just put in a little line sort of showing that's somewhere right in here. So there's kind of here's a little triangle of a wing sticking out there. So once I have these drawn in, then I'm in that. You can really start anywhere that is interesting to you. I then come around and start to refine those angles, and I draw in more heavily. And you notice how our eyes kind of go to this dark graphite line. There's all this other stuff here, but the graphite line says, look at me, just ignore the man behind the curtain. That's what you use to kind of get that shape originally. But there we go. And once you start drawing on top of that, There's just sort of a sort of a lively life energy that is in these little sketchy lines. But our eyes just go right to that dark line, not so much our colored pencil. Now, all these have kind of had their heads more up, but let's hold on. We have this. All right, so here's head up. Here's head down a little bit. So this is a godwit. Remember that godwit we saw earlier? This is the same kind of bird, but the weird thing is that it's got its neck tucked down. So I just want to say a little bit about tucked in necks. This bird has the same neck structure that we saw up here. It's just that its neck is coming back here, turning this way, coming down like this, and back up. So it has, its neck is actually making a big S shape behind the scenes right in here. And that's then, instead of a flat chest, is giving this thing kind of a bump chest. And so this is a very typical posture, a very typical silhouette that you're going to see. Instead of the neck up, stretched like this, you're going to see this little V behind the neck and the back. So the head comes down, little V here. Look at that negative shape. Look at that little V. So that is something to expect and to look for, so that when we see it, we can catch it in our sketch. So here's a little V that comes down and up, and its back is like this. So I'm just going to pet the bird again, give it a ball of a head. Now it's looking down, and I'm going to do the same thing of looking at the negative shape in the front. There's a little V in here now, and that neck is now, I'm expecting it to make a bump out. Expect the bump of the neck. And then our belly sticks down from that. I'm going to put a body ball in here, and that is kind of filling out our bird. So here I got this negative shape there. I find if I start my drawing anywhere else than getting that first negative shape right behind here, very often my bird has the wrong posture. So now I start all my drawings by capturing that angle, capturing that posture, and building my sandpiper out from there. Look at this with head down, right? That's the same species as this one. This is a little dowitcher here. And this one had its head up. So we had this behind the head here. It's this, there's just a little V. Huh, that's interesting. And there's also more of, this had more of a flat chest. There's more of a bump here in front. So let's do a little sketch of that. Pet the bird. I'm going to come over that head, and then there's a back. I'm going to put my ball of a head in, and sometimes you can put in your beak direction first. And then I'm going to say, all right, your throat comes down. There's a little V here, a little nugget, and then we're going to swoop out like this. You don't have to kind of draw this whole thing around. That's going to be carried out by what this is just going to get you kind of to the point where you can kind of give up this line, and a ball will take over from there. Wants a forehead angle. At this stage, it's a good idea to check your proportions. Look, if this is its head, my body is really too small. But it's easy to change your body sizes at this stage in a drawing. If I get all sorts of eyes and detail and feathers drawn in here, I can't change the body size anymore. But at this point, I could just sort of say, let's give this birdie a bigger back, right? Let's give this birdie a bigger back. And there we go. I just changed a bird from ending here to ending here. So those first lines, I think I'll make this flatter. So pet that bird. It's coming here, and then that's flattening out there. Yeah, I like that a lot better. Tail sticking in there. So this idea of what artists again call the negative shape. What is the shape back here? It is a great way to start any drawing of a live critter, be that your dog, your cat, indoor cat, please, or a shorebird that you're seeing out there at the marsh. Now what we're going to do is we're going to, if we just stop there, then everybody would only draw shorebirds in profile. So I just want to say a little bit about turning the birds at some other angles. And here's how I think about it, these things from the front. Or actually, let's first just kind of go on the side here. I don't want to think of this as a flat silhouette of a bird. I want to think of it as a three-dimensional form, that this is not a circle, but a ball. And there's a ball of the body here, sort of a egg or a football of the body in here. I want to think of that as a three-dimensional form, so that when this thing is turned towards me, right? Here I just started by drawing in a little head. I'm going to draw a little negative shape down the side of it. And what is the negative shape on the other side here? So I just draped some negative shapes over either side of that head, getting the shape of the air here, the shape of the air here, and then I've got a body here. And I want to think of this not as circles, I want to think of it as balls. So if this, I'm going to draw a ball off here. If my ball, turn this into kind of a globe, and it gets an equator, that equator is going to wrap around the globe like that. And the tropic line is going to come up in here. So on this bird, I want to think of it as rounding here, right? So here's this little bird coming here. I want to think of that chest as rounding around the same way that it would on a little globe here. And what that's going to do is as I'm putting patterns and things on the bird, that's going to keep this bird rounded for me. I'm also going to draw a line right down the middle of its tummy here. So these lines help me think of these as three-dimensional forms. And if I were putting in little stripes and things on its belly, they would be following those same lines. Let's take a look at a bird from a slightly different angle, and we'll look at how to kind of sculpt some lines around it. So this bird it's not a full side view. It's tilted towards me just a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is I'm first going to start the same way. This bird's back there's a big bump and a little bump. I'm going to put in a ball of its head. And this one is pecking out in this direction here. And then I'm going to think of on the underside of the head, it comes in, it comes down a little bit, and then over. And then I've got kind of the catcher's mitt for that ball of the body. I'm going to put a little tail sticking out the back of that. And then what I'm going to try to do, so this is a good time to stop and check my proportions, see if those are looking solid to me. I am going to just sort of help myself think about this bird as a three-dimensional shape. So if the midline of its back, it's going to come up here, kind of up around here. It's going to come over the top of the head in here. There's where my midline is. And it's going to come down the belly somewhere in there. This bird has a neck zone that is coming in here. And see how I'm thinking of this as a three-dimensional shape. I'm taking this neck and I'm wrapping it in here into this ball of this body. That is rounded. So when I'm drawing in little marks and stripes on the sides of these things, those are going to be following these lines. So I would have, you know, that if they continued down this way, would be wrapping around the side of the body. Little bars in here. I want to think as those kind of come around, that is on a three-dimensional form. Let's go on bird from a slightly different angle. Here from the front. All right. So how am I going to start? I'm going to pet the bird. Same way. See all these different angles. I can still start by petting the bird. We come out, we come down, we come over. I'm going to give myself a little ball of the head in here. And my bird is looking beak pointy down here. Neat little negative shape underneath the bill here. I want to get this, see, I started making this little negative shape too far in here. Then it would have had this little pinched in neck. So I'm going to bring that out here a little bit so my bird has a little bit of thickness to its neck. And I'm just going to get this kind of going down far enough that I can then take over with that ball of the body.
Jack, your drawing is getting a little bit
sorry about
off
that.
center. There you go.
Oh, I appreciate that. I just get so into it that I'm not looking up at my screen. So anytime I do that, please say, Jack, recenter. And think about this thing three-dimensionally. Where's the center of its chest? Put your finger on the screen and just tickle the bird down, if it was in a little bird suit, where its zipper would be down the middle of its tummy. Right? I'm thinking somewhere like this. And now I want to think of this. Again, there's that, here is that little globe. I support the round earth approach. Seems to be more evidence for that. And so what is that then saying about these little marks on the bird? That it means that this line comes across here, and see how this line tucks up into there? We're going to tuck that up into there. So these lines are going to come in here and tuck up into there. So then as you're drawing these birds, they're feeling like a three-dimensional thing to you. as opposed to a flat shape on your piece of paper. Now, everybody do this one on your own. I'm going to be doing it too, but don't be following along me. We're just all going to be, we're going to be sketching us some dowager here. And just sort of see what, where are you going to start? What are you going to do? So make those calls, make those decisions for yourself. I know there's a lot of details on the body there. We're going to get into those in just a moment. For now, don't worry about all that detail. Give yourself maybe half more minute to finish playing with your bird. Now, let's get into the weeds, folks. The feathers on birds don't just sprout out like grass all over the bird. They arise from different little groups and they make specific piles on the bird. Take a look at this bird, and and at first it is this chaotic jumble, especially when you look up on the back. It's like, oh no, feathers, right? Yeah, there's some big ones. There's some, start just sort of looking at here like, okay, there's a bunch of small ones in here. There's some big ones in here. Yep, there's some more. There's some really big ones over there. There's some pointy ones. Then there's something totally different going on in this zone here. That's totally different than that, all right? And this part here is more similar to that, more similar to like this head business seems to be going on here. And once we get into here, we're kind of scaling out with these little ones, bigger, 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 some smaller ones in here. Like, oh no, what's going on? What on earth is going on? How can I make sense out of this bird? Well, I'm glad you asked. We're going to kind of map out the territory of a generic sandpiper and learn the feather groups that are on it. And to do that, this bird in flight is going to help dramatically. All right, so here's the wing of the bird. And notice a couple of things. Notice up here on the shoulders. On the shoulders of this bird, there's a bunch of really big feathers. And then going out on the wing, so those ones on the shoulder of the bird, Those are called the scapular feathers. They're, the bird's scapula lies right in there. They call them scapular feathers. So scapular feathers, big feathers in 5 rows up here on the shoulder of the bird. Don't worry, I can't count the rows either on this bird. Then let's look at the wing. The wing, for people who've kind of gotten into bird wings before, there's the primary feathers out here at the front, there's secondary feathers in here. Notice that in each of those sections, small feathers, bigger feathers, bigger feathers. In here, small feathers, bigger feathers, bigger feathers, bigger feathers. They're in these rows. Going from small, getting progressively bigger as you go down the wing. And also take a look in here, right next to these, where these scapulars come down. These last feathers in here, these secondary feathers in here, they're long, they're pointy, and they're sticking out this way. Slightly different angle than what we've got going on here. These ones, these long feathers going there, those are called tertial feathers. They're the last primary feathers. And sorry, the secondary feathers. These last few secondary feathers are long and skinny, and they stick out at a totally different angle. So when this folds up, we get this kind of a pattern. On the back of the bird, let's go back there. Here's the back of the bird. There's a bunch of small feathers, back there. All right, I'm small feathers, I'm on the back, right? So that's what's going on up here. There's a pile of small feathers. And then we have this big mound of small getting larger called scapular feathers. 3 rows of smaller ones, 2 rows of bigger ones. So they get smaller, smaller, bigger, 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 out to here, right? This whole zone there is the scapular feathers. And they make a really prominent bump and pattern on the back of birds. So the back of the bird, small, the scapulars, a big deal. And the last few rows of these, they're scalloped like a pine cone. And the wing tucks in underneath that. All this stuff down below here, that's all the wing. And let's go back here for a second. Remember these smaller feathers getting bigger? That's what you're seeing here. Smaller feathers getting bigger, getting bigger, getting even bigger. And then those are my tertials. So these are the tertial feathers. These ones back here are these ones that were sticking out down here. Those are my tertial feathers. And then all these feathers here are all piled up in neat symmetrical rows, from smaller ones getting bigger. Smaller getting bigger. These are all covert feathers. These are covert feathers. This big row here of them, those are called the greater coverts. Here are the median coverts, and these little ones up here are my lesser coverts. So lesser coverts, median, greater coverts, tertials. Where you ask, are my secondary feathers? You can't really see them very well at all. This little blob sticking out the back here is the tip of my primary feathers. Oops, let's go back to this, these feathers here. So you don't see most of the secondaries. You can see some of the tertials that stick out behind. You've got all these covert feathers here on the secondaries piled up. The primaries are almost completely hidden except the very tip of the bird's wing. Right there. Let's look at a real bird. Oh my goodness. What's this big wad on the back? Look at that big wad on the back. Check that out. Say it. Say it. You know what it is. Say it out loud. That's right. Those are your scapular feathers. Look at what a big wad it makes on the back of the bird. Small, bigger, 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 biggest. Right? And then it goes small again. Why does it go small again? Because now we're getting into the wing with those smallest covert feathers. So small, bigger, 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 biggest, and then small again. Covert feathers of the wing here. And so there's the biggest row of those are the greater coverts, the median coverts, and then all these are the lesser coverts coming up into here. What are these ones with the cool zigzag tiger pattern sticking out here? Those are the tertial feathers. So tertials, greater coverts, median coverts, lesser coverts, scapular feathers in the back of the bird. This little gray tip sticking out here is all that you see of the primary feathers. So the wing gets really covered up by tertials and coverts and scapular feathers. And here's the front of the breast feathers covering this up. Why is that? Because if you need to migrate crazy long distances to be able to survive, you do not want your wing getting damaged. So you cover the whole business up with covert feathers, tertial feathers, breast feathers. You're protecting your flight feathers. We're not really seeing much of the primaries at all. We're not really seeing the secondaries at all. They're being protected. Whoa, that's crazy. Let's look at this again. So without me saying anything, I want you to look at this little sandpiper, Western sandpiper here, and see if you can make sense out of what you're seeing instead of going like, and then there's the back with a lot of feathers. No, right? The back, and then the scapulars. I'm not counting all the rows of scapulars either. I don't see them all. They're kind of all tucked up on top of each other. But that row of big ones on the back, yeah, that is the scapular feathers. And then look down below that. Smaller feathers getting bigger. Those are the coverts. What are these sticking out here, these long things? All right, pat yourself on the back because you probably just said tertials. And there's your primary sticking right out there. Oh, that's just too cool, right? And let's protect this wing even more, okay? Let's protect this wing even more. Whoa, whoa, where did all those parts, like here, like look at all these coverts, right? What, they're gone, oh, not you, but you, right? They're gone. What happened? Did it have a covert operation and have a covertectomy? No, right? Find the scapulars. Start with the scapulars because they, especially the last two rows of scapulars, they get really big. And now you can spot the scapulars. So most of this is scapular feathers. The back of this bird, it's all scapular feathers. Bonus points if you can put into the chat. Look at the leg color. What sandpiper is this one? Oh, who's this cutie? It's little tiny. Oh, such a cute little sandpiper. Absolutely adorable with yellow legs. All right, but look at the scapulars, right? So big zone of scapulars. And then what do we see sticking out from them? Okay, I know what these are. Those are my tertials. Then these must be the greater. And then where's the rest of my wing? It's all covered up by scapular feathers. And look at how much we fluffed the breast feathers over. We're doing everything we can to protect those wings. How much of the primaries and secondaries do we see? That little tiny bit of dark gray right there is all you're seeing. Okay, so let's map this out. All right, we're gonna draw ourselves a generic little sandpiper here. Right, little head, my throat. They're gonna have a little beak come down here. My throat's gonna come out like this. Maybe give myself a little bit of bump. And then I'm gonna have my ball of my body, a little bit of a tailness out here, and legs are gonna come there as a little joint. Oh, you're a cute little birdie. Okay. Now, let's map this in. So on the back here, we're gonna have back feathers in this little wedge right in here. And then we're going to put our scapular feathers on top of that in a big pad. And those scapular feathers are going to start small. And then there's going to be two big rows in the front. And they're overlapping from front to back. So they're doing this, like these ones here are on top of these ones. And then there's another little row of these mid-sized ones. Now, I don't recommend you draw in all the feather edges. On some birds, you can see them, but on a lot of birds, now by big rows, you're going to see in a moment that you don't always see this. And then, oh, okay, more big row scapulars. So I'm drawing in this side, pointing those scapulars down in this direction, pointing back. And now just how much of this bird's wing do you want to have visible? Is it drooping its wing down low and you're seeing a lot of that? Does it have it tucked up more? Let's put the breast feathers all kind of fluffing up here. Woo, kind of fluffed up like that. We're going to have a little bit of wing sticking out below here. And if these scapulars are coming back like this, sometimes you'll see these greater coverts coming down at, we're going to put them in a little row here, at a different angle here. And then there is my medium coverts, and the rest of the coverts are up in there. So I'm going to show a little bit of greater coverts there, and then some tertials sticking back here. A little bit of my wing out there, but we've got all those tertials there. Here's my undertail coverts. All right. So I just drew the wing without drawing, like all I did of drawing primaries and secondaries was that. Right. This little, here's some primary feathers sticking out behind these tertials, because the secondaries, they're tucked up underneath all of this covert action. Now we're seeing this here in like nice symmetrical rows. Actually, let's see one more. Where, like, look at this, look at this. So first, so deep breath, and then go, all right, let's look in here. Let's see if we can make sense out of this. Now it looks like a few of the feathers are a little bit out of place. You're right. But you see, can you spot a good thing? A good landmark is just that when you find that big row of feathers, that big pad of feathers in the middle, know that you're looking at the edge of the scapulars. So there's my graders coverts down here, and then here's median coverts, and here's some lesser coverts sticking up in here. And what are those out here? They're not primary feathers. We're seeing tertial feathers covering up all the business. So sometimes, let's do another little sketch of this guy. So here's we're gonna pat the bird, and this bird has a little beak that's sticking in here, and it's got a little belly that is going to come in here. This little negative shape wants a little bit more crafting and love. Ball of the body. Proportionally, this sandpiper has a really big head. Little birds, big heads. And what I want to do is I'm just going to map in roughly that there's a lot of scapularness going on, and then there's a little crescent of wing happening in there, and a bit of tertialness. So rather than thinking that I have to draw in, sometimes what happens is when you learn something like this, you then go, all right, 5 rows of scapulars. I'm going to draw my scapulars in, 3 small, 2 big, all right. And you get this sort of, you end up drawing what you think you should see, as opposed to drawing what you really are seeing. So think of this as kind of the template, and then draw, this is going to sound weird, but draw less than you know. Suggest what's going on there. And very often you're going to find that the drawing is a lot more interesting, is a lot more successful. So let me just kind of let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to get this pencil, and I'm going to maybe suggest there's this little line between the back of the bird there, and then it's got breast feathers that are covering up here, and we're going to have some scapular feathers that are down here, some big feathers. So I'm not having to get in there and think of yourself, you're out in the field. If you're trying to go like 1, 2, 3, how many scapular feathers, you're going to go nuts. But this allows me to kind of quickly get this sense of sort of scapularness. And so what I've done is I have suggested that there's some detail in there instead of, I mean, if the bird's asleep and you've got a spotting scope, maybe, right? But if you've got binoculars and you're having to kind of juggle between your binoculars and your pad, you've got enough going on. So think of, how can I suggest rather than showing everything that I think should be there. Ooh. This bird is looking down more. Look at this negative space here. See on my bird, there's a bigger space here. This bird is really looking down here. And that's why I don't have enough forehead. That's why my bird's expression looks off. Let me just move that beak down. And we're going to see that this bird's face, like, it's going to look better. So I'm going to take that beak and I'm just going to attach it down here. Now it's a little bit too big on the top, looking a little bit ducky. But I now have a little bit more of a forehead, and I'm liking that. Cute little bird. So this yellow legs are the key on this one. Somebody may have put it in the chat. I'm not monitoring the chat as I'm going along. Right. Now, notice that this bird's scapulars, this guy is sort of, he's got them all kind of ruffled up. I'm pointing this way. No, I'm going to point this way. What about you? I'm going to point down this way. Oh, that's great, because I'm going to point over here. All right. Migration is hard. And sometimes you haven't preened. Right? Sometimes you really haven't. You know, we've got all these things kind of going every which way. But if you haven't been really carefully preening, you can have sort of a jumble up there. And that's okay. So if things aren't lining up, you know the basic pattern. Can you make sense of this wing though? The molt going on, that's kind of cool to see. This one, super jumbled, right? So don't think that you have to draw in the edges of every feather and draw those in. You would be much better off sort of suggesting the feather masses. Here, the scapulars are coming down all the way over all this business. This bird's back is a bunch of scapulars, and it has been neglecting its personal hygiene, and it's all roughed out. So yes, this is the theory, the pine cone, but we don't always have to draw exactly what we know should be there, because sometimes nature does something different. Let's just spend a little bit of time on the bill. I want to talk, just find from my my handlers, how much time do I have left, including time for questions?
So it's about 6:05 right now. You still have a good half an hour. But before you move on to bills, can you maybe back off and show your full sketchbook so people can see all the sketches all at once so they can get a nice overview of what you've done?
I have these guys and these guys.
Great, thank you.
Let's take a look at the bill. The bill makes the bird. Bills are the proportions of them, the angle of them, the shape of them, how they fit into the head, does a lot to give the look and the expression of the bird. So here are two different species of birds. These are different species. Just as you're sitting there, how many differences can you spot? Let's just take a look at their heads. You've got a big eye, you've got a smaller eye. Why do you have a bigger eye? Because you have a bigger head, even though you're further away. That's really great. This one has a lesser sized head, right? This is a greater and a lesser yellow legs. The greater is actually bigger. So when they're standing right next to each other going like, I'm a greater, I'm a lesser, you can go like, oh yeah, you're big, you're small. It's hard to tell size in the field. But should they be adjacent to each other, you're in great shape. But also let's check out the proportions. Think of the head as a bill measuring tool. The head is a bill measuring tool. So this head, if you put another head out here, you can fit one more head in here, and you get about a head and a half, right? Come out here, there's about a head, like takes you there, and then you've got about a half a head. On this one, if I come out one head length, I've basically used up my bill. So even though you've got a smaller bill, you also have a smaller bill in proportion to the head. So diagrammatically, my greater yellow legs, if this is its head, I'm going to go out one bill and a half. And my lesser yellow legs, I'm going to go out about a bill length. Isn't that cool? So I want to have the bird's head in proportion to its body, but the bill in proportion to its head. Another thing I want to point out on this one is we're going to look at how the bill fits into the head. And let's also take a look at kind of where the eye is relative to that. If you do a lot of precise pecking, it's a good idea to be sighting down your pecking tool. So this bird, if you ever watch yellowlegs feed, they'll be kind of like getting this guy, get this, oh, look at that little bug right there, zap, got you. And so they're doing a lot of direct pecking. So I draw a line right back here, and the eye is sitting right on top of that bill. Let's draw a little head here. And I'm not going to put the beak in the middle of the head. I'm going to bring it a little bit lower down here. The eye then is going to be sitting on the side of the head. My bill is going to stick out here. The forehead angle on your bird is really, really important. So yellow legs have a steep forehead. So the forehead goes up, and then we come over, and then you're coming down from there. The other thing that is going to really make your bird bills look right is to give your bird a little bit of throat. So don't do this. Don't say, here's my bird head, here's my bill, and here's my neck sticking down from that. You want come back for a little bit of throat, and then you get into that S-shaped neck, right? So give it a little bit of throat. I'm going to draw in your eye here. Give it a little bit of lids, just so the eye doesn't feel like it is floating in the void. In the lores area here, there's a little bit of dark. And then generally speaking, bills are a little bit wider on top. So you'll see a little bit of a nostril in there. And then as I draw in the feathers of the head, instead of drawing around them like this, here's the edge of my head. Something that is, if you want it to look a little bit fluffy, look, as I come up here, I'm going to just, especially when I get to the top here, I'm just going to, right in there, I'm going to give it a little bit of some fluff marks. And then we can kind of smooth it back here. And as you come around this angle on the back of the head, sometimes you also will find just a few little fluff marks right in there. Anytime you kind of change the angle of the bird's head, you can often get those little fluff marks. Many birds have a supercilium or an eyebrow. So above this kind of eye area, you'll have darker feathers. And I'm going to, instead of just drawing that with tone, I'm going to put in just a few little feathers into that zone. But I blocked out where I left blank. You want your eyes to look really cool. Don't just make them black. Put a little highlight in there. I know in this photograph you don't see that. But if I put a little bit of eye shine in there, it makes the eye look a little bit wet. And the bird looks like it's looking back at you. Let's look at a different bill shape. I want everybody to draw this bill. All right, just take a moment. I'm not going to draw it yet, but draw this, just kind of quickly gesture in the shape of the body and then put the bill in on your bird. Gesture in the shape of that body and put the bill in. Haven't gotten to the bill drawing part yet. Fast forward to that part. All right, here is what I find really challenging about drawing these birds, is that anytime there's a feature that is really cool and really prominent, we tend to overdo it. So this bird has a really long bill. Question, did you draw the bill too long? Sometimes our brain goes, it just gets hooked on, whoa, you've got a long bill. And so your bill, you'll overdo it. Another thing that happens is you go like, wow, it's got a real curve to it. And so we overdo the curve. And so if this is my bird, right, let's see if I can, this one has a steep forehead coming up. It's top of its head here. And we're going to come back there and give this bird a little bit of a throat. And then come in here. But it is easy when you are drawing a bill like this to do this. Because it's curved, we give it a really big curve. And we start the curve way back in here. But if you look at this bird, its bill actually goes straight for a long time, and then there's a little bit of a curve at the end. So a useful way to draw these is to draw a straight line coming in saying, okay, what direction are you looking? And then somewhere in here, say like, and we're going to kind of curve it off somewhere a little bit in there. Now, I want to check to make sure I don't make this too long. So about in here. All right. So all I did is I drew a straight line and then figured out about where the inflection point is, and then make sure I don't get my bill too long. And then I can come over that. And I get a bill with a little bit of a curve to it, but not too much. Should have made my bird look down a little bit more. So the same is true with an upturned bill. You can actually tell differences between male and female avocets by how curved their bills are. Isn't that neat? So that's a fun thing to look at. So first, see, next time you're out with avocets, can you see differences in the curvatures of bills that are birds that are standing near each other? And then you can look in the field guides and figure out who's got the long ones, who's got the short ones before you, I mean, the more curved ones, who's got the straighter ones. But before you do that, I encourage you just to look at their behavior. Is that something that you might be able to deduce yourself? What do you think from looking at their behavior? Let's draw this head and let's draw this bill. On your own, draw on that head. And then when you get to the bill, draw a straight line out, figure out where that inflection point is. Draw a little line up from that, and then go over that to make the curve of that bill. Nice forehead, steep forehead angle here. Not all of our shorebirds are going to have a steep forehead angle, but something that really makes an avocet look avocet-y. It's something that really makes a stilt look stilty. But if you put that over on your dowager, it's not just happen. Not really worried about the whole bird. We're mostly interested in the shape of that beak. But let's also notice this. If I come in from the beak, look at this. I come in here from the beak. We're really used to that eye being right on that line, aren't we? Well, it's not always that way. Some birds, especially if you're not doing direct pecking, you are going to get your eye up a little bit. If it's down here lower, it'd be kind of closer to where all the mud and water is going to splash. So this one, like a duck, has an eye that is riding higher in the head than you would expect if you just place your eye right along that eye bill line, like we saw in the yellow legs. Remember that yellow legs, which is like, oh, I got this. All right. This one, I'm doing less direct pecking. I'm doing, and I have that eye up out of the way. This will be here for about 30 more seconds. See if you can get that bill shape, that forehead angle, and then place that eye. Useful things to look at. What is the distance between the front of the eye and the front of the head? The back of the eye, the back of the head. The top of the eye, the top of the head. Where does that come in relative to where, if you project a line along the bill, where does that come in? Place your eye. If you don't like your eye placement, redraw it. This bird is about to fly away. Go join its mate. And they'll sit there looking at each other's bills and whispering "Viva la difference" to each other. It's an avocet thing. This is a dowager. And you may be wondering, like, is that a long-billed or a short-billed dowager? Well, I'm glad you asked. Oh, actually, I thought there was a different slide that's coming up next. Let's just do one more everybody draw Super Cute's head here. And let's use the head size as a bill length measuring tool. So at your own speed, on your own paper, just draw that in. You think this one does more pecking? How would you guess? What guess would you make about its peckiness relative to that avocet that we're looking at? Let's place that eye. Where is it compared to the front of the head, compared to the back of the head? Right in here on the forehead, some little hint of some shaggies. Little bit of throat. You've already got throat. Mine, I'm going to make this part of the head have a little bit of just some little shaggy lines right in there, just to suggest sort of the roughness of these feathers, and a little bit towards the back of the head here. If you give this bird eyelids, the eye sits in the head much better. Notice that their bird, the bird in the photograph, is cuter than the bird that I drew. The reason I suspect is that the real bird has a larger eye than I drew. So proportions, big heads, big eyes on heads. That's something that really makes things cute. You know, all I have to do is just a little doodle like this. Look, I have a big head and I've got big eyes. And then that little guy is cute. Just because it's a big head with big eyes, maybe a little bit weird. That's why this guy is cute. Right? Big head, big eyes. So your brain says, oh, that's cute. So if you draw something that's not cute enough, check the size of the head relative to the body, check the size of the eyes relative to the head. That's the cutometer, right? It's changing. The proportions of that will change the cute index of whatever you draw. And one last little thing before we bounce over to any questions. This is kind of fun. Just sort of one more sort of thing to kind of bear in mind. I want everybody to look at the forehead angle of these two birds. And also look draw a line right up the mouth and look at where the mouth line is relative to the eye on these two birds. Can you see that? The one in the back, its eye is higher on that line. So the line going from the nostril up to the corner of the eye is up at a steeper angle on this one and a lower angle on this one. This ends up being a really odd but useful character for helping us tell the difference between short-billed dowitchers and long-billed dowitchers. So all my identification friends out here, here's a way to geek out on this, right? This bill angle to where the eye is, look at how this is a wider angle. This one is higher off that line. Isn't that cool? Long-billed dowitchers, in addition to that long bill, another thing that makes it look really long is that then it has this line going more straight back from the eye. The eye's right back there waiting for it. Less of a forehead angle, more of a forehead angle here on this short-billed dowitcher, and this line is up in a straighter. So very often the supercilium of that's the eyebrow, of the long bill, it looks more straight, and it looks more, even when it kind of continues on this little character here on the short bill, they'll look more of kind of a curve, more of an arch up here. That's pretty neat. So all of those are strategies that you can use to draw shorebirds. And the purpose of doing this, it's not so much that I want to make a pretty picture of whatever I'm looking at. And it's that the process of drawing helps me observe and notice things that I otherwise wouldn't see. The more you draw pictures of these things, the better your ability to draw what you see will become. So if you want to get good at drawing shorebirds, the secret is draw a lot of shorebirds. It'll make you a much, much, much better birder. And you can start, an easy way to start is just with birdpixel.com or seeingbirds.com. You can look at the photograph. They're not going to be moving. They're not going to be going anywhere. You can draw that one, compare them, go back and forth. That's a lot of fun. And then what you can do is to take that out into the field. And you're going to see that it just adds so much richness to your birding. So I really appreciate everybody showing up here and joining us today. And also, again, I want to send out a mad shout out and thanks to the Lahontan Audubon Society, not just for hosting us, offering educational classes like this one. They've got lots of cool stuff in their programming. But in addition to that, they're very deeply involved in research work on birds to give us the data set that's going to help us make informed conservation decisions. So thank you very much for the stewardship work that you're doing. And we've got, am I out of time for questions?
Nope, we still have plenty of time for questions. Thank you so much. It looks like we do have a few questions coming in the Q&A, also some in the chat. If folks can put them in the Q&A, it's a lot easier for us to keep track of because there's other conversations happening in the chat. One quick reminder, if you do want practice, we do have spring wings happening this weekend in Lahontan Valley to celebrate the shorebird migration that's happening there. And Diane is also hosting some practice sessions after the Tuesday following each webinar. So Diane, if you want to plug those really quick, and then we'll get to questions.
Yes, so tomorrow and pretty much every Tuesday after these drawing sessions, I'm going to be leading either a studio session or a nature walk to practice some of the techniques that we're learning in these classes. I think, like Jack and Christine have said, this is a really good way to learn birds. It's a good way to practice your observation skills, and it's a great way to develop your drawing skills as well. And like Jack and Christine said, one of the things that you can do is when you go out into the field and you see a bird, you can vocalize what you're seeing. I am seeing a crest on the head. I am seeing a short bill, a bill that's about the same length as the head width. I am seeing short wings. I am seeing a long tail. I'm seeing really long legs, or I'm seeing yellow legs, or I'm seeing black legs. If you just say some of those characteristics out loud, it will help you actually remember in your mind, because birds move so fast that to actually see it, even if you take the time to whip out your camera and try and take a picture of the bird, chances are the photo is going to be fuzzy and you're not going to remember any of the details. And then what have you learned? But if you sit there and you watch it and you look through your binoculars and you pay attention really closely to the details, you'll find that you will remember it and you will be able to describe it. And whether you write it down in a notebook or if you draw it, whatever comes to that is easiest for you to do, that is going to help you learn the bird. It's going to help you identify the bird next time. It's going to help you identify that bird to a friend. And it's going to help you learn a little bit more next time you see that bird and want to learn more about its behavior. And that's what we're all about at Lahontan Audubon, is learning birds. So tomorrow I'm going to be at the Northwest Library. I just put that in the chat box. And I'm going to be there from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. I'm going to be there with a bunch of taxidermy mounts with shorebirds. And this is a great chance to look at the birds up close, look at their foot structure, look at their wing structure, look at some of these feather tracks that Jack has talked about, look at where the eye is relative to the midline of the bill, look at how far that eye is set back behind that bill, between the front of the head and the forehead to the back of the head, and look at the angle of the forehead. Look at some of the angles to see where, the head curves, where it curves by, where the neck curves by the back. And you can practice some of these things in person at the studio session with me. Next week, I'm going to be leading a field trip to see if we can hopefully try and find some pinyon jays, because that's going to be the subject of our next workshop. And after that, I'll be leading another studio drawing session with the taxidermy mounts.
Thanks. One last thing, as we mentioned, this program is funded in part by a grant from Nevada Arts Council, the National Endowment for the Arts. One of the things for our reporting is some demographics about who's attending. So I'm going to put a poll up while we answer questions. It's totally optional if you want to answer these questions for us. But we'll go ahead and jump into the questions that we have. First question.
Before we start, Jenny, can I make another brief announcement? I just wanted to say, I've heard several times on the chat and in the questions, will this class be recorded? And I wanted to say, yes, we are very fortunate. Jack and Christine have agreed to have their classes recorded, and they will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And I will just right about now. Actually, Diane just texted it into the chat bar. Yes. So yes, we'll be posting about that. Christine and Jack will also be sharing those on their social media sites. So please, by all means, check us out on YouTube and watch these classes as many times as you wish. And we love to help you become proficient in your artwork.
Thanks, Parker. We'll go ahead and jump into the first question we have from Becky. Jack, you mentioned that you used to draw birds one way, now you're drawing them a different way.
Oh, yeah.
Lovely reminder that we're always learning. Can you speak briefly to how your drawing process has evolved over time?
Oh, absolutely. So I'll demonstrate what my process was and why I changed it. So if you have my book on how to draw birds, it's using the old technique. So maybe like you guys have now got there's still a lot of information that is very relevant to drawing birds in there, but this tweak I think is a big one. So I might have to do a second edition. But here we go. I am going to this time change nice to this. There we go. Right. So there's a bird in front of you. What my original technique was is that I would first draw the posture of the bird. The bird is sitting at this kind of an angle. And then I would put an oval of the body over that. And then I would figure out how big the head was and how far away from the body it was. And I would put that in, and maybe which direction the bird was looking. And then I would look at the negative shape behind this head and get that back of the head there. Look at the negative shape in front here, and then put that in and kind of build it up from there. So the process was first posture, then proportions, and then I would get these angles, posture, proportions, angles. And that worked. But I found that if the bird moved, it was very difficult for me to really realistically reconstruct its shape and its posture if I didn't have this negative shape. And so I realized that that negative shape back there was so important on making the bird that I was drawing look like the bird that I was really seeing, that I kept moving that up further and further in my drawing process. And then I realized that if I got this negative shape here, that would essentially give me the posture of the bird. So I didn't have to do the posture. And if I could get the size of the head here and then use that to kind of guide how I would start to kind of aim this down here, that would then really help me get those proportions. So I'm still looking at the same sort of thing, but now again, what I'm doing is I'm getting the original posture of my bird. Then I am getting these angles. Then I'm looking at the proportions, getting this sort of relative to that. This will be a little cormorant here. And that's how I've kind of changed my approach to drawing. This bird needs a throat. Out on Alcatraz Island recently and saw these Brandt's cormorant colonies that are out there. They're just spectacular. They were doing crazy displays and things to each other. So these postures that they were taking were just changing so quickly that if I tried to catch that this way, I would not have been able to. All right.
Oh, Jack, I have one last request. Can you show us one last shot of your previous sketch, the one that has the long-billed curlew on your book?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I think it was just the other page.
All right, let's see here.
Yeah, that one, the on your right side.
So here we go.
Yeah, where your right hand is.
Let's see, right there.
Yes, bingo.
That's what I finally got on that one. And then here were those starter drawings. And there's my bird party.
Yes, we can totally see that illustrated now that you've given us that demonstration of your first method, then second method.
Yeah, so it's very intentional to kind of get that negative shape up front. And then I'm thinking about proportions as I'm kind of coming down and kind of getting the kind of what I think of now as the catcher's mitt that's going to catch that ball of the body. And are there any other questions?
Oh, we had a question about eye placement and the importance of that. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So if you peck, if you peck, you are going to want to have your pecking tool sighting, your eye sighting down that pecking tool. So that's true for like all the passerines that we're familiar with. You know, if you're, you know, let's say looking at, like this is a big reason why people's gull drawings sometimes don't look like gulls, is that, you know, here's a gull. Steep little forehead angle there. And right, so the gull is spending its time with its sighting down this and just pecking away at stuff with this big multi-purpose tool here. And you compare that with somebody who's not really targeting its food, but maybe might be sticking its beak down into the mud, right? There you're going to get you want to get your eye away from the splash zone here. And so if I am drawing a duck, for instance, on the duck, if this is my head, instead of the beak being up here, I draw a line at the bottom of the head. The duck's beak is coming out here. And the duck has this big, a really cute little duck cheek that sits up on the side of its head. If you look at the ducks, they got these cute little cheeks. And their eye then is placed up high on top of that, kind of getting it out of the splash zone for the mud. I think I want more of a throat on my duck. There we go. And so, you know, now, you know, though the splashing that's going around here around duck beak land is going to be not getting in your eye. So very often they think about, are you pecking or not? And that's going to say a lot about that placement of the eye. So if I draw a duck and I put the beak up in the middle of the head, like on a you see how my duck now is looking like it wants to, it's not looking quite as cute and ducky. And that's all about that eye placement. You know, here versus here. That's not, that duck looks off. It kind of looks like a duck gull hybrid. Did that address the question?
Yeah, I think so. That is wild to see the difference when you just move the eye a little bit.
Yeah.
The next
or
question.
let's even do that on this one here. Like, let's
Yep.
take this guy. I'm going to move that eye down. There's just something not right about that duck, right?
Yeah, it doesn't look quite right.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to sleep with that in my mind. So I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
move it back up here. Now we're looking at old duck again.
Yeah.
Quack.
Great. Susan asked, are the tertials so long on other types of birds? I feel I've been seeing other birds where the primary stuck out more obviously under the secondaries without being covered by the tertials, unless those are actually the tertials I was seeing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Susan. Those on the birds that we're used to seeing, the tertials are kind of a they're a small feature on the bird. So let's say here's a little. There's another little birdie, and it is so I'll zoom down just a little bit more. Here we go. So here's a little passerine, perhaps a flycatcher. And it's sighting down its own little beak. Its scapular feathers are actually just a little zone up in here, hardly noticeable at all, almost indistinguishable from the back. And its covert feathers, instead of covering everything up, they just cover up a little bit of the wing. And it's, those, you've got the row of the greater coverts. There's a row of the median coverts below that, and there's lesser coverts that are up above that. Those are the places where you get wing bars on, say, passerine birds. If these covert rows have dark on one side and light on the other, then you get those wing bars in the birds. So that's just that little kind of wing bar zone is all you get in most little passerine birds for covert feathers. And then what about the tertial feathers? Well, here's my secondary feathers sticking down like this in a big pile. And there's 1, 2, 3 tertial feathers that will stick down. And sometimes those have light colored edges. And then all the rest of the secondary feathers you see right next to them, so they don't cover up the whole pile. And then the primary feathers stick down from that. So you get this whole primary projection out beyond where the coverts are. So the coverts stop here, the secondaries and the tertials stop down here. And so that's on, say, your typical songbird. color code it. Your covert feathers would be this whole zone up in here. And you know, that's not covering up a lot of the wing. Your secondaries are in here. And then your coverts your tertials, sorry about that. Your tertials are up in there. And then this zone sticking down in front here, those are your primary feathers. So let's see, we did orange for, oh, and then we have scapulars, right? So let's do the scapulars green. So if we have green scapulars, we have purple tertials, we have orange coverts, the primaries and secondaries are blue and red. Let's just bop back to one of those other birds for just a second. And remember the little green zone on top, that's now this whole big green zone. The what did we do for tertials? Tertials were purple, coverts were orange. So here's my tertials. My coverts are orange. And what about my primaries and my secondaries? Well, in this bird, my secondaries are entirely hidden. And I've got a little nugget of primary sticking out there. That's a totally different arrangement. Again, going back to this character, there's this one, and there's, well, yeah, I wish I did them on the same page. Did that answer the question?
I think that probably covered it. I did get confirmation that you answered the I question well, so thank you. And we have several questions about supplies that you're using different colors and drawing the guidelines. Do you do that in the field? And what materials are you using? Several people asked about the purple pencil.
The reason I'm using this purple pencil for all of these guidelines is that the pencil that I usually use for drawing in my guidelines does not show up very well on the camera when I'm doing a live online demonstration. But I'll show you the pencil that I normally use and carry in my kit. This is it. It is a Prismacolor Kohl Erase non-photo blue pencil. And it makes an incredibly ghosty drawing that you really cannot see very well. So I don't have to erase it at all. With somebody like this, everybody's eyes do snap to the dark lines, but with the purple, if you really look for it, you can still see that more kind of in the background. It's not really that distracting. Your eyes really are drawn to those major lines. It's an even better effect with the Prismacolor Kohl Erase copy not non-photo blue pencil. The disadvantage of that is that if you're trying to do a demonstration online saying, look at here are my the lines that I make to kind of start a drawing, you've just lost your entire audience because I can see what I've got here perfectly well. And it looks good to me. But then I look back at the screen and everybody's going, yeah, not so much. But this is my tool of choice. I do sell these on my website. I love starting a sketch with these. I also, when I teach kids to draw, the whole idea of getting kids to make a light, pale preliminary drawing is really hard to do, because kids will start to draw and you might as well sort of, it's like almost as like you gave them a Sharpie marker that it's either on or off. The idea of pressing lightly does not compute. And so, but if you give them this pencil, they can make all these sort of initial sketchy lines, and then they can draw over that, and everybody goes like, oh, this is cool. I can, so if you, rather than saying, okay, make your drawing light and block in the basic shape, you just say, block in the basic shape with this, and then put that down. And now let's go over that. Do you like your basic shape? If so, great. Now let's go over that with this. Are there any other questions?
We have 2 more questions and 4 minutes left. Can you speak to a little bit about connecting the bird to the ground, perch, etc., in a realistic fashion?
Sure, absolutely. Here's what I recommend not doing. If you draw your bird, and then you draw on your branch, you then have to make these legs kind of come all the way out from your bird to get to that branch. And you very often end up with legs that are like too long, too short. So what I prefer to do, this is a trick that I was taught by bird artist Keith Hansen. He's in Bolinas, California, and an amazing birder, kind person, and outstanding illustrator. He's sort of my bird drawing Yoda. Is I draw my bird in, I then draw my bird's feet in, and then I draw my branch to my bird's feet. So don't draw on the branch, then draw the legs to connect them. Draw your feet the right length, and then you can put them in. As you're drawing your bird, think about where you're putting those, so let's say I've got a bird here. I want to think about where the center of mass of this bird is. There's not a lot of weight out in that tail. So mostly the mass of the bird is in here, and the mass of the bird is going to be in here. And so what I will do is I will think of that as sort of like, that's the weight of the bird. So if I had this carved out of wood, where would I put it on a toothpick to balance it? What is the balance point? If I put the toothpick here, it's going to fall backwards. If I put the toothpick here, the weight's forward, it's going to fall forwards. So somewhere in here is that balance point. And so what I'll do is I'll kind of approximate that. I'll kind of like, okay, here's my bird. And I think roughly if I put that toothpick in here, my bird will be balanced. And then what I'm going to do is either my leg will come down right, and the foot will be right where that line is, or my feet will be on, that line will be between 2 feet. So I want that balance line to be either between 2 feet, or if I only see 1 foot, then I want that foot coming down to that line and right there on the branch. that's where I am going to do it. If I have the foot there, my bird will appear to be balanced. I could also do that with 2 feet. So if I have one bird foot coming down here, right? Notice that on this bird here, if it's got a little foot on a branch here, see how that bird feels like it's going to fall forward? But if its other foot is coming out here on the other side of that, all right, that bird no longer feels tippy because I have that center line, that balance line between those feet or the foot on the line. So I'll just sort of visualize where that is, and that will help me figure out where to put my feet in. Not all birds are balanced. If you look at, say, a chickadee, sometimes, or a nuthatch, sometimes they're upside down and they're just clinging on to something. There, you don't need to worry about what their balance is. They're just using brute strength not to go flop on the ground. But if you're perching, the bird doesn't have to have a full-on death grip on this branch. Very often you'll see like the little toes loosely hanging down from something like this. The little toe will be coming around here. This little toe will be over here. They don't have this full-on death grip coming down. They're just have their foot loosely wrapped on that branch, and they can balance on top of that. So they don't need a, I'm going to hang on with hold my little birdie mic. Is that what was?
Yep.
Oh, actually, one other thing on this. The bird from the front. Here is a sleeping goose. Here's a sleeping goose. Here's sleeping goosey, right? It's got its head tucked in, right? And you're seeing sleeping goosey here from the front. All right, well, on little sleeping goosey here, here's the ground. That, if this is the center line, that's my sort of balance line, and they've taken one of their feet and they pulled it up there, what it's going to do is that leg that's coming down from the other side is actually going to go diagonally across, and then the foot is going to be down here underneath that center line. So you'll see the same thing on a shorebird that is napping. That leg will come in at an angle to this spot here. The other leg is tucked up in here. Balancing birds.
Very cool. Thank you. I do want to be respectful of your time. It is 7:03, but there's one last question. Do you have a minute to talk about oil pastels?
I do, but unfortunately I won't be that helpful with it because I really don't use oil pastels. I've seen other people do really cool stuff with them, but it has never really been my medium. So I don't have too much useful to say, other than if you've got a set, have fun with them. You can really get some bright, vivid colors and get gorgeous, gorgeous stuff.
Great. Well, like I said, we went a little bit over, but thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you to Diane and Parker for their help tonight. And hope folks can join us for Spring Wings to practice some of their skills. And if you're not in the area, then hopefully you can join us next week to learn about another local species, the pinyon jay. So with that, I will thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, everybody. I'll see you next week. Again, want to encourage everybody to support your local chapter of the Audubon Society. It's a great way to make friends, celebrate nature together, get crazy good at birding, and also connect with stewardship in your area. We all can make a big difference about the fate of this planet. There's kind of a narrative that's going around right now that I think is really destructive, which is there's some things that are messed up and you can't do anything about it. We absolutely can do something about it. And if we work together, we are a really powerful force for change. And so your local chapter of the Audubon Society is a terrific way to come together in stewardship of and celebration and stewardship of the earth. So reach out to your local chapter. And again, if it's possible to support the Lahontan Audubon Society, they didn't tell me to make this message, but I think they're awesome. And if it's possible to help them out with their mission, that would be wonderful. Thank you all for being here. Be well, be kind, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.